been around for like 5 years. People are like, wow, he's so young. And here we are 5 years later, and they're still talking about it. But yeah, he's a young guy. He's from Germany, of course. And I think he's mostly known for Home Story Cup. It's where he's kind of, you could say his personality shined, I guess is one way of putting it. But lately, his results have been kind of peaking. He's been doing a lot better.
Indeed. But all right, we're going to be starting up here on, of course, our first map of Black-Pink. In the top right-hand corner of the map, it's our red Protoss player. Put your hands together for DnS.
And his opponent in the lower left-hand side, Hailing? Almost said Herring? That's not correct. It's Hailing from Germany, HeRoMaRinE.
One of those few last remaining players on mouse also.
Wow. That too. It's like,
yeah.
It's the two things about HeRoMaRinE that people will talk about is he's so young, and they're like, mouse sports? Is that, they're still
StarCraft?
Yeah. He's there.
Doing his team proud, I guess. They feel like they want to keep him, so we'll see how HeRoMaRinE is able to do in this one. One thing I will say also is just like DnS is, I feel, been one of those players that in online events, sitting from the comfort of his own home, we see him get these really fabulous results. We were talking about how, in some ways, people might consider him a little bit of the better player here, but I feel like it's usually the offline tournaments that we don't really end up seeing the same DnS. But this is Challenger. You get to play from the comfort of your own home and still play for a fairly large prize pool, so maybe this is where DnS gets to shine.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of times when players mention, or not even players, but just commentators or players, mention experience, a lot of times what they're actually referencing is that offline play. You can kind of pare that down and start talking about, well, experience can also just be high-stakes StarCraft and tournament StarCraft, WCS, that kind of thing. And that definitely is something that people are talking about. But mostly, it's the difference between getting out of your home, packing up your keyboard and mouse, and playing somewhere else. But playing from home is a different beast altogether. I think it becomes a little bit of a, like, let's just mention it and then move away from it because it's equal for everyone, right? Like, everyone is more comfortable at home. It's not like we're going to be like, well, I don't know. I think HeRoMaRinE with schnitzels could be more comfortable than DnS with, you know, baguettes and other French things. So I think it's a wash, but it is interesting that in this tournament, these guys do get to play in their boxers if they prefer.
Yeah. Always kind of nice, but okay, first Reaper making its way out. It's scouting around for potential proxies or weird shenanigans because HeRoMaRinE did in fact neglect to go for any kind of early SCV scout. Most Terran players, I think, these days tend to just like scouting with a Reaper, but we do have a sneaky little probe here in the bottom right. That Cybernetic score has been finished up for a while. Doesn't seem like it's going to be Stargate, but I wonder what it will be used for. Still could be Stargate, just, I mean, just to keep it from being scouted, but to your point, it could be something else as well. It can develop into a gateway, a robo. Protoss right now are really utilizing all different techs against Terran, and Terran are kind of living in fear, so that Reaper does get picked off here by that forward adept. But it's interesting. If you watched a Muslim stream or some of these other top Terran streams, they'll kind of talk about it. They don't SCV scout because they feel like whatever they see can change into something else radically different, or it kind of sets them back on the economic game. And then if a Reaper just kind of scouts around the main base like that, then dies, now they live in absolute primal fear. They think that any tech is possible. And a lot of times Terran players won't even scan, or if they do scan, they feel like they're just, again, really, really far behind. So already, just kind of in the situation of the game, HeRoMaRiNE's in a tough spot. Yeah, not having any vision really does sting a little bit. And there's already a forward pylon here. There's, I think, 3 gateways going to be coming down, as we have 1 gateway finished up, 2 on the way. Robotics facility as well. Is DnS really going to be committing to a lot of heavy aggression here?
Well, it's not just yet. He's not committed, I suppose. A forward pylon like that's just really cool. It's in a spot that can see drops. It definitely can warp in, as we see here. So it's going to be some adepts, and it does get spotted as well. So kind of a mixed bag of everything. It's actually going to be stalkers in conjunction with those adepts. The adepts just blink in. Are they going to sell? No, they're not. And there are still Marines there. In fact, what's in this medevac? It's empty, right?
Oh. Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and scouting medevac, I suppose.
Oh, that's really cute. I mean, he didn't get any scouting information before. Having to pull a few SCVs here, a little bit worried about how many units there are. The medevac also ends up pulling back, so, I mean, a nice idea from HeRoMaRinE, but he doesn't actually get all the way across the map. Yeah,
but it does scout that pylon, which is kind of interesting, because it almost works against him right now. Seeing that pylon this early can, again, set off the alarm bells where the Terran player's like, oh my god, he is coming after me. But we can see behind this that it's going to be probably Colossus or maybe Disruptor drop. Actually, that War Prism is very likely to be Disruptor drop, but There's that first scan. He does see the double gas at the natural, sees the robo, and can start to infer that he's facing some form of tech here coming in. He's going to load up for this drop as well.
Yeah, I got 4 Marines and a Cyclone making its way across the map. Can find that pylon and snipe that little bad boy off, preventing any additional quick warp-ins for harassment potential. But like you said, eventually there's going to be that Warp Prism making its way across the map, ready to do some of its own damage. And
Colossus.
Yeah, there's the Colossus behind it. Adepts loaded up in the Warp Prism, and we'll see. Man, HeRoMaRinE backing up once again really just doesn't feel like, I guess, all that comfortable moving across the map yet.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. He was... You know, he didn't get that information we talked about in the early game. He's going to go ahead and snipe that observer. That's nice. But he's going to push out with just a fairly nice push here that kind of is able to receive a lot of different things. The Colossus is just about the worst answer for it, though. If it was like 3 or 4 tanks, they'd like the Colossus. But with it being mostly just Marines and only the 1 tank, oh, jeez.
This ramp. Oh,
yep.
God. Those force shields are so perfect for sniping up just a handful of these units. Has to be a bit careful, though. The siege tank going to do a lot of damage. But now the Colossus is out. And this is where things get a little bit dicey for HeRoMaRinE. How is he going to be able to take this? Sniping up the sentries,
yeah.
But...
Good focus fire there. I don't think he was ever going to win that fight convincingly, but he is able to snipe some of the gas-intensive units and kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to limit your information as well. He killed the observers, and actually, look at that. Nice little delay of mining inside the main base there with that Liberator. Does find the 3rd base, and is going to need to find a way to get out of here too inexpensively, if you will, and it looks like he will be able to do that too.
Yeah. Oh, that 1 Widow Mine causing a lot of problems here. Sacrifices a Stalker for it. Picks it off, though. And on the bottom side, we got, Liberator spotting out that Warp Prism.
Well, who spotted who? Right? Liberator spots the Warp Prism spots the Liberator. They're both just kind of looking at each other here, saying, okay, I see what you're doing here. It is going to be a Colossus build here, by the way. It's the 2nd, even 3rd Colossus coming out in range. So none of that fake shenanigans of years old where you go 1 Colossus and double forward or something like that. He is going to go down this route. And it's up to HeRoMaRinE to respond. So the Liberator's going to constantly kind of find these interesting spots, which on Black-Pink are quite powerful. You can see the couple of Stalkers coming in here.
Okay, he's going to be able to pick off 1 of the Stalkers, and the other Stalker... Wow, not going to be able to get the kill, but I mean, should eventually be able to pick that off or at least force it back for now. Warp Prism, I think, still just waiting around, not really able to find the opportunity to move in with a Cyclone there.
I love this from DnS, though. Warp Prisms are so phenomenal at just kind of constantly scouting things like this. The timing of it. And also, of course, later when you do have charge lots and you have 9, 10 gateways, if you still have that Warp Prism, it can be a huge thorn in the paw of the Terran player. But both players have stabilized here. They've equalized, if you will. HeRoMaRinE taking his 3rd at a decent timing. He knows he's facing Colossus tech, so he's going to have some time to kind of gauge how he wants to enter into that field. And also, he's seen the Warp Prism, so he's prepared for what DnS is trying to shovel his direction.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is, we do have that single engineering bay researching the +1 over here for HeRoMaRinE. I think we ended up seeing DnS grab the double forward, so he's getting double upgrades. He's going to eventually get ahead if HeRoMaRinE doesn't end up investing in that 2nd engineering bay.
Well, it's something to keep your eye on, because like you said, I mean, it's 1, so for right now, that's not the weirdest thing, but if kind of time continues and it remains just the 1 engineering bay, that becomes a huge problem, or like just kind of makes you all in, basically. You're just like, well, I'm behind upgrades, I got to do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird here, too. Okay, no. I was just going to say, it is Marine tank, a couple of Marauders are popping out, but it is going to be Vikings. We do see Vikings starting to come out, which is nice, because that Warp Prism will become either picked off or a little bit more scared to kind of enter into the field. But also, that's a nice response for the Colossus.
Oh, this is a nice attempt at sniping off that Warp Prism, but just a little bit too late on the pickup over there. Warp Prism manages to get away to the safety of that dead airspace, but this is where those Vikings you were talking about come in.
Love this, too. He commands them. Oh, the recall. Nicely.
It get picked
nicely done at all. Terrible idea. No, it's a good idea. Good reaction by both players, though. But HeRoMaRinE, just a small little note, doesn't attack move in that direction and alert the Protoss player that there are Vikings in the area. They get really up close so that if it does try to escape, it doesn't have anywhere to go. So a nice play by HeRoMaRinE, who has pulled ahead in supply, by the way. He's 24 supply up, mostly in Army. In fact, he's only up 3 workers, so it's almost entirely in Army. And that's not the most strange thing. That's kind of how the supplies will look in a TvP, but keep your eye on it. If DnS doesn't get hip to the idea, and I think he does, I think that Observer sees it, so he knows it's about to be under attack.
Okay, and that does mean DnS has an opportunity to move into the right position, but there is a scan. Oh, not going to move up that ramp. That is a wise decision.
Yep, just going to siege up here a little bit, crawl forward. A lot of his army is Marines, so a couple of bad laser beams, and a lot of that army can get fried up, but he does have some Marauders there. Not a lot of Vikings, by the way. So when you go Vikings, you kind of expect a larger number than that. It is only just the 3 Colossus. So you don't want to have like 30 Vikings, but 4? 4's not a lot at all.
Yeah, this is going to become a little bit problematic if he ever engages directly versus this army, which is continuing to grow
This
for
can't
DnS.
be a real push. This has to be this has to be a fake. I mean, not necessarily a fake, but like a sell. This is like a, hey, look, I could attack you at any moment. But with 4 Vikings, no way. No way.
He has the ghosts on the way, so maybe he's waiting for that so he can get some good EMPs off, but this has got to be a very slow push if he wants to wait all the way until ghosts finally arrive.
That's what I'm saying. He's teching behind it. He does go to the top of the ramp. We're going to have that fight, a huge concave of Protoss units. It's just the 4 Vikings almost immediately losing one of the Vikings. They're trying to work on the Colossus, but not very fast. The Immortals anchoring this so well, and it looks like HeRoMaRinE is going to go ahead and try and stay here. This is a little bit of a bloodbath between the two of them. The Colossus are all dead.
But the Zealots come in, and they are able to tank a lot more damage here. The Immortals and Stalkers are tanky units.
Wow.
They can survive a bit longer. The Ghosts do their best to EMP, but it's just not enough. And DnS, he loses a lot of the Colossus, valuable units, but he keeps some of these Immortals alive, so still has some firepower.
I completely underestimated HeRoMaRiNE's ability to take that fight the entire time. He goes to the top of the ramp, kind of away from his tanks. The tanks are in an okay spot, but he goes into a concave of Protoss. Guardian shields are up, upgrades are better. It was just weird. I totally expected DnS to just mop the floor with him, but he didn't. Now, I will say, DnS, as you pointed out, is able to retain those Immortals. If he loses those Immortals, I look at this game and go, well, he's dead. He's just lost too much tech. 3 Colossus, all the sentries, and then a bunch of the Immortals. But by keeping the Immortals and letting their shields kind of regenerate, I think he still has a pretty strong army here.
Oh, I cannot emphasize how awesome it is for DnS to have this observer on top of the army and see exactly what units are being turned out behind this. Seeing that it's still a handful of those Vikings, but a lot of Liberators being made. Yeah. Seeing that there's still a couple of Ghosts being made. These are all valuable things to see and to utilize to figure out what he should be making on his side.
Fear Dragon.
Yeah?
Yes, everything you just said, correct. But what really kind of confuses me here is he is actually still pumping out Colossus. So a second Colossus is about to come out. As upgrades kind of uptick here, as there's more things for the Terran to deal, Colossus become less scary, especially when they're reset. So for him to see that he's still making Vikings and make the choice, I'm going to continue to make Colossus, is a little peculiar to me. So he can win that battle if there's not enough Vikings. But the other savvy, cool thing for Protoss to do is be like, oh, you're making Vikings? Well, I'll stop making Colossus and pump out Immortals, or just go to Charge Lot Archon Storm or something along those lines.
Man, I want to go back also to the upgrades right now, because this has become a problem. It's like you were saying before. It was not the end of the world before. It was kind of bad, but not the end of the world. Now it's starting to get to the point where we might actually see 3-3 finished up before HeRoMaRiNE has more than 3 upgrades.
It's a mistake. It has to be. He's just now approaching +2 attack. And it's either a mistake or he's in the all-in territory of like, it doesn't matter because I need to end the game before that. But as you point out, 2-2 for Protoss. Now there's a huge Liberator field here. HeRoMaRiNE's got good micro. He's got the Vikings kind of safely cocooned inside that area. We're going to have that engagement.
All right, we're going to see the Colossus trying to get those laser beams to do as much damage as possible. Good EMPs land on most of the Archons, so those disappear pretty quickly. The Vikings obliterating the Colossus.
Yep. Colossus once again got dead. He lands the Vikings to kind of buffer a little bit of damage. His Bioforce, pretty unimpressive in its own right, but there's just not a lot of AoE. In fact, there's no AoE here for the Protoss. It's just the upgrades keeping DnS alive in this fight, but will it be enough? The 3 Medevacs doing what they can to keep the Bioforce here, and he's kiting backwards. HeRoMaRiNE with a 33 supply advantage, 30 up in army, and I gotta say, Fear Dragon, if anything, it's the upgrades. If somehow DnS can claw his way back in, it'll be because his guys are Rambo, and they're going up against the red shirts.
And it's absolutely crazy because as he is able to continue buying a little bits more time, just dying as slowly as possible, he's approaching 3-3. He's going to be an enormous number of upgrades up on his opponent, and it might actually be the big turning point. He's getting up the Archons as well.
4 bases, excuse me, for DnS, pumping out units as fast as he can. He is trying to kind of climb back up in that supply, and one Immortal just kind of edges forward a little bit too closely, almost loses life for that. 3-3 getting ever so close. Not even a third upgrade here for HeRoMaRiNE. He hasn't even started. He needs to end the game right now, and here we go. DnS is going to stomp forward. There haven't been any EMPs. The Archon's anchoring pretty well. Most of the Liberators going down, but they're doing a lot of damage, and it just looks like a good spread here from HeRoMaRiNE. Should be enough. He's 50 supply up, but a lot of Zealots come in, but there's just too much bio.
+3 armor finishes up. These Zealots take a while to die, but there's just not enough of them.
There's no army. Liberator goes down, and now the Marines are on top of this what was once a third base. DnS kind of seeing, I guess, that the upgrades could be a factor is going to delay here. A lot of players would tap out at this moment in time, but he's just going to try to fight. He's going to try to get something together. And HeRoMaRinE, I don't know. He's just got too much bio. I think he's up so much in supply. I don't see any way DnS could do this, even with his, what is this? It's 6 upgrades to 2. It's a 4 upgrade advantage.
That is only something you see when you're facing like an AI computer or something, and they just don't remember that there are upgrades in this game. But man, this is such a rough fight, I think, right now for DnS. He's put up a good effort, and he's... Oh, are you kidding me? No.
I think he just still dies, but it just looks comical. It's like...
Oh, Archons with +3 weapon upgrades versus 0 armor bio. I guess it goes pretty quick.
Every shot, like 5 Marines are dying, but there's just still 10 behind that. There's too much stuff. DnS gets underneath the Liberators, but it's just not enough. He taps out, GG is called, and HeRoMaRinE will take game number 1. A little bit of a weird ending there with such a discrepancy in upgrades, but HeRoMaRinE was able to get the right composition together and put together a good attack. Great micro by him as well. You were talking about how the Ghosts seemed to be a little bit far-reaching, but they were actually kind of part of exactly what he needed. The Archons otherwise would have tanked so well. Actually, the whole army. I just gotta say, the EMPs hit just gigantic swaths of Protoss, and it was really strong.
Yeah, it was really solid. And you kept mentioning how he was just HeRoMaRinE at different points in time, even when they hadn't really had too many skirmishes against each other. HeRoMaRinE was just up in supply, and I feel like that carried on until the entire very end of the game. So it just goes to show you also just raw macro potential, even in the face of potentially, in a weird way, superior units, not necessarily in terms of tech, but in terms of upgrades.
Well, I mean, that's why we love this game. There's many different paths to the top of that mountain. You can win in different ways. I would just keep my caster monocle critiquer on and say, I think he could have afforded a second eBay and probably could have afforded a couple more upgrades, and this game would have been even more securely in his favor. But that being said, HeRoMaRinE was able to still find a way, and like you said, was kind of always ahead in supply, and that was the recipe for success. I again got to look back at DnS and say, I mean, Colossus aren't a bad idea, but they really rely on the counters to them. They're not such huge damage dealers anymore that like just having Colossus kind of is good. If a guy already has Vikings and feels comfortable to add in even like 5 or 6 Liberators, and you're not kind of teching away from Colossus and trying to capitalize on the fact that they're investing in Vikings that don't do much for you, a little bit of a mistake in my opinion, but you know.
Yeah, I wonder if it was also just, I'm like trying to think back to like vision and stuff. He saw that the army was moving out. Maybe his immediate reaction was, okay, well, if you just move out right now, I might just die if I don't have something. If I start throwing down Templar Archives and stuff, maybe I won't make it there. But I totally agree. In the end, the Colossus tech, it kind of just, they all died, and it felt like it didn't quite work out so well. So maybe something else.
Well, it was the reinvesting that was my problem. It was not that he went Colossus to begin with. I think that was very strong, and it was surprising how HeRoMaRinE was able to handle that. It's that after losing the Colossus and still seeing he's making Vikings, that he was like, I'm going to keep making Colossus as well. But again, we have eagle eye vision. We see everything, so we were able to kind of look at these in a vacuum and say, I think this was a mistake for these players. Fighting in Challenger, fighting for all the marbles, it's a very different beast. So I'm more saying it's for the benefit of the audience to kind of think about, as opposed to saying, DnS, you fool, that was the dumbest thing ever. Not really doing that.
Yeah, but okay. Looks like game number 2 is going to be coming up over here on Catalyst. Should be a fun one. Catalyst, a little bit of a different map. I feel like the kind of standard map, I don't know, a lot of it just reminds me of like those kind of older school maps that we had, almost like Overgrowth and stuff. I know I'm going to get all the people in the chat saying, what are you talking about? Catalyst is nothing like Overgrowth. But it just reminds me kind of the open area. It's not super long distances across the map and stuff, so should be a fun one.
It could be. HeRoMaRinE taking that 1-0 over DnS, and both these players pretty equally matched, so I'm curious to see what DnS comes back with. The beginning of this game was, and I'll stick by this, largely in favor of DnS. There was so much information denial. HeRoMaRinE was really playing in the dark and kind of just said, okay, I'm going to do a Marine tank push and figure out where the game is at that point. He only scanned as he's pushing out even. It wasn't even like he knew what he was going into and just doing it. So it was interesting because that's a dream scenario for a Protoss player. If you're allowed that kind of situation, your tech is coming out, super surprising, and you're able to make all those choices, and yet he still found a way to fall to HeRoMaRinE. So let's see if he can capitalize on a better start maybe this time.
All right, we're going to be starting down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, top of the red Protoss player. Put your hands together for DnS.
And enjoying that 1 game advantage. So far in this best of 3, coming out of Germany, it is HeRoMaRinE in the top left-hand side. I should have said that. Otherwise, people would not know where he is.
I know. Isn't that the great thing? I think my favorite is when people get really upset that we say something like, you accidentally say top right. Everyone's like, how could you say that?
That's
like
right.
They can't see that. They can't see the minimap themselves.
I also find it funny.
Oh.
We're going to have a probe scout here from DNS, or at least the makings of a probe scout. A lot of Protoss will do that against Terran, even though a lot of times what they're seeing is pretty similar stuff. But you can get some pretty radical variants in that some Terrans will try for things like a CC first, proxy barracks even, get that Reaper at you faster, and then the proxy barracks can turn into proxy factory. I also think it's actually almost just a check that if you're known not to probe scout, those builds become much more done to you, I suppose, and Protoss don't like it. They want to keep the game in a predictable place so they can be the trickster.
Yeah, I also believe, I'm trying to remember if this is correct, but I think that we had DNS going for some of the earlier wall-ins, maybe to help deal with Hellions in the last game. Hopefully I'm remembering this correctly.
Yeah, he had the Gateway and Cybernetics at the top of the second ramp on that game.
Yeah, so this game, not really as concerned about it looks like, as he opts to just try and go for the Reaper block with the Cybernetics core up in the main base. He gets the Nexus down on the low ground, but may eventually try and throw up some things if he sees something that requires it.
Yeah, I was trying to take a look at what we're... Again, that SCV Scout looking for those proxies. Been watching a lot of European StarCraft, and it's become quite prevalent to open up that way. We've even been seeing like robo openings where you just walk a couple of mortals at them. If you get a Warp Prism out of it, which is, of course, kind of the third thing off that robo, the ability to micro those immortals is really, really powerful. And just kind of keep the Terran player guessing and keep them back. And especially with having fallen one game from DNS, that a lot of times you think that's when they play safer. Well, for Protoss right now, it's almost when they take more gambles.
Yeah, I think it's just always kind of the ups and downs of playing in the meta, where you're always looking for the opportunities when your opponent is just going to be a little bit paranoid. As soon as they stop becoming paranoid, that's when you kind of strike. But you already notice also that HeRoMaRinE has to pull back to help deal with that probe that was able to sneak its way in and start going after the SCV building command center. And by the time the probe is picked off, Reaper has to come back and also help deal with the Adept. So he just doesn't ever get the scout on the other side of the map again.
Yep, and this has been the 1-2 punch coming out from Protoss players for a little while here, and if things align really nicely, like even this Adept, is it doing a lot of damage? No, not necessarily, but seeing the 2 Hellions here is actually massive. And any damage it can do from there, of course, is really nice. But that means that he knows what to prepare for back at home, and we can see he's going to go ahead and start making some kind of a gateway wall. Probably not a full wall off or anything that crazy, but at least narrow down the space so that when those Hellions do show up, they don't have anywhere else to go but into the teeth of the Adepts.
Yeah, and it does look like it's just going to end up being 2 of those Hellions, so that might even be a little bit of a reaction to HeRoMaRinE saying, okay, well, you saw it coming. I know that you're probably good enough of a player that you're going to already be preparing. It looks like he has 4 Hellions total, so can still get something done over here, but it really does require getting past his wall, which is pretty difficult.
Yep, but kind of like the Adepts, they're just going to start to work on it, and the Adepts by themselves actually cannot hold this off, so they do get in here. And it's going to pull that Oracle back. So a really nice move here. It's going to go ahead and get some probes as well. 3 already dying. And he sees a Phoenix follow-up as well. So that information denial that happened in game number 1, not the case this time. Getting 7 probes and seeing all the tech is absolutely fantastic.
Man, that was really, really well done by HeRoMaRinE. I actually didn't notice this before, but he pairs up the Reaper with the Hellion so that even if there is that wall in, he throws down the Reaper grenade, which forces the Adepts to get knocked out, and that's how the Hellions kind of get the run-by done in. So really, really well executed over there by HeRoMaRinE. He gets a lot of damage done.
Well, have you seen the movie The Expendables, Fear Dragon?
I have, in fact, seen it.
You have? Well, those guys, they were called the Expendables, but they never died. In this, when you're called the Expendable, you actually are. So the Reaper, no real reason to do anything else but to join the Hellions in a glorified death. Now this force is going to make its way over here, and it's kind of interesting because you'd look at this and say, what is this pairing here? Well, if there's some kind of like medevac or something like that, the Phoenix can go after them. If there's an exposed mineral line, that's great too. But they can all kind of tank for each other as well. If the Oracle is not being shot by a missile turret, it can do a lot of damage to SCV. So it's a very interesting little symbiotic relationship going on there.
Okay, we're seeing the Phoenix able to get a couple of pickoffs on these Marines and manages to keep all of them alive. Hey, that's really well done.
And an interesting point there, too. HeRoMaRinE actually targeted the Oracle because that's kind of the higher priority of all of them. But in doing so, it allowed everything to get out without dying.
Yeah. Oh, man. And now he's going to move back in. I think he's almost out of energy and maybe has like 2 lifts-ups left in him. Got to be a bit wary. Okay, wow. Forces out a stim as well. Now, the medevacs are out, so it's not a huge deal. Only forces out from 4 Marines, but every little bit is really, really nice.
But he sees the force. He's going to slow it down a lot. If those medevacs ever get too far ahead or away from the Marines, they can get picked off. And he's killing the reinforcements as well and buying so much time. So this is a 2-factor thing. It's doing direct damage, but also HeRoMaRine's like, well, my push is becoming less effective. I need to get across this map and do something. But every time he stims, like you pointed out, Fear Dragon, or every time he slows down to kind of come back and chase away the Phoenix, the Protoss ground army is getting bigger.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just taking too long to move across the map. There are a lot of Adepts out. I don't believe they have resonating glaives or anything, but with the Sentry Guardian Shield, with the Phoenix joining in and potentially taking out those medevacs almost instantly, this could get really, really difficult for HeRoMaRINE to actually push into. Yeah,
it's actually the charge upgrade that is being upgraded right now, but I think the Adepts were more of a like, well, if he really commits to this, a bunch of slow Zealots, if he gets there that fast, will not help me. So he went with the Adepts, but probably going to reinforce now with more Zealots, and you can see the Gateways finishing up as well. And it's interesting, HeRoMaRINE's going to remain committed to this. He's going to kind of kite backwards here. He's got 2 more medevacs coming full of units. That's a lot of bio. It could be enough.
Okay, Adepts don't actually see any of the units from the other medevacs or see the other medevacs, so he's only just now going to get a glimpse. The reinforcements are finally here. Here we go. Stim forward from just the Marauders, I think.
Yep, tries to push the Marauders forward. The Bioforce behind actually just annihilates the Air Force and now pushes forward, and there was a Protoss there. You'll have to believe me, but there is no longer. HeRoMaRINE with the quick 2-0. Not to be intimidated by the Air Force, continues to reinforce and then just destroys DnS. And I like that. The other thing that I guess I should have given some credence to is that if there are Phoenix joining that force, you have 3, then 4, then 5, you can say to yourself, okay, well, Stargates are expensive, Phoenix are kind of expensive. He probably doesn't have the most advanced and scary ground army. That army with a couple of Immortals or anything like a single Colossus or Disruptor is very different, but that's impossible to do economically. So HeRoMaRINE remained confident and was able to get it done.
Yeah, the Phoenix plays really do rely on kind of being this glass cannon that's buying a lot of time. Like you were talking about, is doing that as HeRoMaRINE moved across the map, but either it just wasn't buying enough time or HeRoMaRINE just kind of identifying, well, actually, if I can make my way across the map, even if you delay me a little bit, there's no way you can delay me long enough to actually have up enough gateway units. You keep making Phoenix. It's just something you can't do.
I got to be honest. I'm going to go back on something I said, because I talked about how when you have information denial and just the way Terrans are playing right now, they play kind of afraid. HeRoMaRINE did not play afraid in either of these games. You could hear my complete Protoss bias where I'm like, he needs to go home. There's no way. It's only 4 Vikings. Or like, these Phoenix are buying so much time. But in the end, it actually was incorrect in both accounts. And HeRoMaRINE will stand testament to that. But so many other Terran players in those situations are like, no, he's got a bunch of Adepts. I can't possibly push there. No, I'm not going to do this. But remaining committed to that got him the 2-0, and now he's going to be going to that winners match, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's going to be facing off in that winners match, I believe, versus the one and only winner from the first match, Hellraiser. I think going to be a pretty interesting one. And of course, in the losers match, there's also going to be Showtime versus DnS now. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hop to a short break while we get that next series set up. It is going to be Showtime versus DnS first. We'll see you guys in a little bit. You guys are watching WCS EU Challenger.